Today's video is brought to you by Morgan & Morgan. When you're injured, you deserve compensation, and the size of your law firm matters. Morgan & Morgan has more than 800 attorneys nationwide and has recovered over $13 billion for their clients. The best part, you pay nothing upfront for their services. The fee is free unless they win.
As millions flock to the metaverse, many are experiencing unnecessary pain and suffering. Injured? Just dial pound law. That's all. Morgan & Morgan, America, and now the universe's largest injury law firm.
Hey, what's going on? I'm Matt O'Leary back with another video, and today I will be going through Zach Wilson and what we saw from him in week 4, his first game, and just going forward from there. Before we get started today, I just wanted to mention that you can follow me on social media at Matt O'Leary NY. Also, if you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe to the Just Jets podcast, wherever it is that you get your show. Today, I am joined by Richie from Jets Media. Make sure to check out his content as well, and let's get into the video. All right, I'd like to welcome on Richie from Jets Media. Richie, how's it going, my friend?
What is up, Matt? I'm super excited to talk about the Jets after a victory. It feels so good to talk about this Jets team after they win, as you know.
Yeah, we were saying before we actually hit the record button, like, we're allowed to have fun. We're new to this. The Jets are 2-2, 500 in October. It feels pretty good, doesn't it?
It feels fantastic. We were both talking that we started this YouTube thing at the same time, and when they started, the Jets have been bad every single year we've been covering this team, and now they're 2-2 going into week number 5. It feels good, man, and the Jets fan base should be really feeling good about this team so far.
Yeah, absolutely. And for the focus on today's video, obviously Zach Wilson came back this week, and I wanted to get your take kind of on what we saw from Zach Wilson and going forward. And the reason why I wanted to get to you was because you're one of the more positive Jets creators that I know, and positive, and I know you're a Zach guy. So I need that positivity. I too feel good about our guy, but let's start there. Why, like, what from this past game against the Steelers stood out to you in a positive light about our young quarterback?
Yeah, when I was going into his season debut against the Steelers, the one thing I wanted to see from Zach Wilson in general in his sophomore season is we know what he can do physically. He has the talent in his arm, he has the athleticism, he has all the physical traits to be a quarterback. But the thing that he needs to prove to us Jets fans and to the entire NFL world is, can he manage a game? Does he have poise? Does he have confidence? Can he, read defenses? Does he have the mental ability to push through adversity? Does he have the ability to be a leader of this franchise? And he proved all those things in that game against the Pittsburgh Steelers, because I'm not really as impressed with his throws and his arm talent anymore, because I just grown to accustom it. I've grown to expect it. But what I don't know about Zach Wilson yet is, can he be able to elevate guys around him? Can he be able to be poised and comfortable in the pocket? When the pocket is collapsing, can he step up into the throw and still deliver a dart over the middle instead of being, happy feet in the pocket, rolling to his right a little too early? And we saw that. And Zach Wilson impressed me so much, Matt. And listen, I know I'm a positive Jets fan, but I went into Zach Wilson when we drafted him with the mindset of, he needs to prove me right before I just crown him as the franchise quarterback, because I learned I definitely crowned Sam Darnold as a franchise quarterback a little too prematurely, and I'll admit that. So when Zach Wilson came here and we drafted him last year, I'm like, all right, Zach, you're going to prove to me after a couple seasons. I'm not just going to say, okay, this guy's the savior of this franchise until he proves it. But Matt, I really was impressed with his ability to be poised, especially in that fourth quarter, because we all expected rust in his first game after missing the whole preseason. And he shook off that rust in the middle of the game, went out there in the fourth quarter, down by 10 with 12 minutes to go. And if you rewatch the broadcast, the announcers are saying, all right, Zach Wilson, this is your time. You're the second overall pick. If you want to prove to be the guy, this is the time to do that. And then already knowing what happened, that gave me chills, because Zach Wilson willed this team back, led 2 touchdown drives, and beat the Pittsburgh Steelers in Pittsburgh when the Jets absolutely never win. So I was just so impressed with his mental ability and being able to elevate guys around and be clutch in the fourth, most importantly.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a couple things you hit on that stood out to me, and I think that we should get into. One of those being mechanical. I thought he looked much more smooth and fluid than he did as a rookie. There were times, especially early on, when he was getting pressured a lot and running for his life. It seemed like the mechanics went away. But towards the end of the year, like the game I'm thinking specifically, the Tampa Bay game, that looked like he was spot on in like mechanics and what he could be. And now the box score of this game against the Steelers wasn't necessarily pretty. If you just look at that, the 18 to 36, 50% completion. He had the 2 interceptions, a 59 rating. But if you go beyond just the box score, which I think is so important when you're watching these young quarterbacks, you have to get the full story. You can't just look at it from afar and say, oh, he only completed 50% of his passes and had a couple turnovers. He must have stunk. That's not really the case. And as you said, when it mattered most, he came back and was huge for his team in the fourth quarter, leading not 1, but 2 touchdown drives to come back in the game. And to me, that's huge.
That is absolutely huge, Matt. And the fact that he was able to will his team back and do just that. And we heard from Breece Hall and Corey Davis what Zach Wilson said in the huddle before that game winning touchdown. He said, let's go score an effing touchdown. And the fact that he said that and he riled up the offense and they actually came through with it, that tells me a lot about this quarterback. It also tells me a lot about the team that believes in Zach Wilson and they're looking at him and they have confidence. And I feel like Zach Wilson just has this different swagger to him. He has this different presence to this franchise that it's like this Jets fan base has never really had a quarterback like this that has swag. He's hitting the gritty. He's doing all these little fun things that Jets fans are growing accustomed to. And, you know, when it comes to his completion percentage that you just touched on, I feel like Zach Wilson, and you mentioned it perfectly, you can't just look at the box score and evaluate Zach Wilson's game against the Steelers without watching the game because he sacrificed his completion percentage to avoid sacks. I mean, this man was sacked once, and he was getting pressured all day. But you do got to give the offensive line credit because they showed up when it mattered the most in the fourth quarter because Zach Wilson had time to throw the football in the fourth. Throughout the game, though, in the second and the third quarter, Zach Wilson was running for his life, and he did a really good job. You know, I think if Joe Flacco played this game, Matt, we're talking about a different situation. He would have been sacked 5 times. Zach Wilson was able to dance around the pocket, avoid all the pass rushers, and just try to get somebody open down the field. Nobody's open, so Zach is a smart player now, throws the football away, and gets a lot of incompletions because of that. So, like you said, you can't just look at the box score because it tells a completely different story. And to be honest with you, Matt, even before the fourth quarter began and Zach Wilson led that comeback, I was like, guys, I think Zach Wilson's playing a lot better than his stats are telling you. And then he goes out there and has 128 yards, 10 of 12, and a touchdown in the fourth quarter. So that really tells you that he really looked good in the sophomore debut. But there's definitely still a lot of things to clean up, and that's expected when you're coming back off an injury.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm so glad you brought up Joe Flacco because I'm sure you got it in your comment section. I was getting it in mine where it's like, oh, the Jets are right now, they're in a better spot to win with Joe Flacco. And it was BS then and it's BS now because if he played, as you said, if he played that game, one, how many more times is he getting sacked? You said 5. It could be more than that, to be honest, because it felt like all Zach was doing was escaping, buying himself time, and smartly, as you said, throwing it away. But also, another issue with Joe Flacco is when he got hit, he was fumbling too. So that it would have been even some more turnovers there. But you're so spot on with that one. I wanted to get your take on because, as you said, there are still areas for him to improve on. He threw 2 interceptions in the game, and both interceptions were kind of different. I mean, me personally, I put the second one on Conklin, so I kind of want to get your take on both of those, what you saw on the first one and what has to change, and then what you saw on the second turnover.
Yeah, I mean, the first interception, it felt like rookie Zach Wilson all over again, especially the situational ball. Like, that just can't happen. And, you know, hearing Robert Saleh talk about that, I think he was either on the Michael Kay show or just by the press. And it really opened my eyes about where this team could be in the future if it really clicks. Because Robert Saleh said as a coach, in that situation, there's 2 minutes left in the first half. They're up 10-3. They have a chance to really lap them because they get the ball in the at the beginning of the second half, and they were trying to go get that touchdown, go up 17-3, and then they score another touchdown after the second half, and they're up 24-3, and that's the game. That was Robert Saleh's mindset, and I honestly cannot, fault him for that. I love the aggressiveness. I feel like that's where his confidence level in this offense is. And unfortunately, it did not work because then he throws an interception. And Robert Saleh then said, okay, but then we have to go evaluate. Maybe next time you run the football and just take the 3 points and be more conservative there. But I can't fault the Jets for trying to be aggressive in that situation and giving Zach Wilson an opportunity. But unfortunately, the interception, it was man coverage. I don't know why he's targeting Jeff Smith in that situation. He was open. Jeff Smith beat his man. And unfortunately, Zach Wilson threw the ball, and the guy, I forgot who, I think it was on Elijah Moore. It was man coverage. The guy who intercepted it broke off of Elijah Moore's coverage and just picked it off, and it was a high throw. So it was just a bad play by Zach Wilson. Obviously, as a Jets fan base, we prefer them just be conservative, run the ball, and get the 3 points, because then it was a 6-point swing in that situation where the Steelers get the ball back, and then it's a really bad roughing the passer penalty on Carl Lawson, and they get 3 points to Steelers. So that was just a really bad sequence of events that the Jets coaching staff needs to clean up. And the second interception, I agree, man. That was more on Tyler Conklin. It was third down. Zach Wilson puts a lot of zip on that ball, and it was high, and it hit both of Tyler Conklin's hands. So you definitely got to give Tyler Conklin the blame on that one. But at the same time, man, I feel like Zach Wilson, when it comes to his interceptions, I don't really expect this to continue. We saw last year at the last 5 weeks of the season, he threw no interceptions. And at BYU, he had 3 interceptions in his final year there. So I don't think the interceptions are going to be a big problem for him. But I really hope that he can clean up those situational mistakes, especially at the end of the first half.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think something else that I want to get into in this game, and I agree. I think with Conklin, it's a ball that hits him in the hands. It was high, but catch it and fall forward, you have a first down. And then the first one on the interception, to me, it was just an unnecessary risk, and you want to cut those out. But even if this is quote unquote a bad Zach Wilson day by looking at the box score, right? Like, obviously, we know the full story. We know what he did in the fourth quarter. I don't think either of us would classify this as a bad Zach Wilson day. But even maybe when you could say he wasn't at his sharpest or at his best, he still he threw for 252 yards. He did that just twice last year. He threw for 258 against Carolina in his first game, and then threw for 297 against Tennessee. So even when he's not at his best, the YPA was up over 7, which I think was certainly something that was important that I wanted to see. So I'm really excited for the rest of the way to see what he could look like when he's actually on his game and clicking on all cylinders.
Yeah, and they got a big test this week against really, really good Miami Dolphins defense. And I said at the beginning of this video that, the physical traits that he possesses, it's kind of like I've grown accustomed to it. But at the same time, I'm still obsessed with it, man, because his quick release is special. Because all this thing saying like, oh, his arm talent. Remember the Pro Bowl or when he was at BYU, the Pro Day, where he had that throw across his body and everyone was like, wow, this guy has different type of arm talent. But what impressed me the most is quick release in the pocket, man. He steps back, 1, 2, 3, drop back, hitch, balls out so fast, and it's just a laser beam out of his arm, Matt. And it really is something special that we have in Zach Wilson. And the best part about it is we have not even seen the full potential of Zach Wilson yet. He has not even scratched the surface of what it become, like you said, because if this is a bad game for Zach Wilson, putting up 252 yards, a touchdown, a receiving touchdown, 2 interceptions, and a completion percentage of 50%, which is not good, what is it going to look like when he can string 4 quarters of that fourth quarter in a full game? Because I feel like there's another dimension of Zach Wilson's game that we're going to see if he can stay healthy and everyone around him can stay healthy and the receivers can start getting open for him down the field. Because I feel like Elijah Moore, for example, the Jets are really making sure that he's running those deep routes and he's getting open. But the problem is the pass protection is not holding up. So Zach Wilson doesn't have a chance to give Elijah Moore the ball down the field. So it's all up to Zach Wilson to really try to extend the plays. And it's just a matter of time, Matt, until he extends the play. And instead of throwing it out of bounds, Garrett Wilson or Elijah Moore or Corey or whoever it is breaks off their route and they're wide open down the field. And Zach Wilson makes another highlight. That's just going to happen soon. And I guarantee it.
Yeah, no, absolutely, 100%. And you mentioned obviously a tough task against the Miami Dolphins. They like to blitz a lot and they like to get after the quarterback. So what does Zach Wilson have to do this week to build on his success?
Well, what's another thing that really impressed me with Zach Wilson, Matt, last week was his ability to handle the blitzes. I mean, there was his first throw of the day that was impressive, that one to Elijah Moore on the sideline. I don't know the exact amount of pass rushers, but the pocket was collapsing, and he just stepped up and let it rip. And that's not something we saw from Zach Wilson consistently as a rookie. We saw that in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers game, but can Zach Wilson stay in the pocket when there's a blitz and trust the offensive line and trust that he can get the ball out quickly enough before the pocket collapses and he gets hit? And he really stepped up because there were so many times where the pocket was collapsing and I'm like, uh-oh. And then he just lets it rip to Corey Davis over the middle or Conklin for the first down or Garrett Wilson or whoever it was. And that was really impressive to me. So that gives me a lot of confidence in Zach Wilson's ability to handle the blitzes of the Miami Dolphins because we know they like to do man coverage. Sometimes there was zero blitz. And I got confidence in Garrett Wilson to get separation on those routes and Elijah Moore to get separation on those routes. So it's up to Mike LaFleur to scheme it up a little bit. Do those quick passes. Don't do long development plays where Elijah Moore has to run like a 10, 15-yard route because the pressure is going to get to Zach Wilson. So I think Zach Wilson really impressed me to be able to handle the pressure because it's not like he was dancing around the pocket all day. There were some times where the pocket was collapsing and he stepped up into the pocket and still threw a dart over the middle. And that's something that should give Jets fans a lot of excitement because that is the definition of a franchise quarterback if he can do that consistently.
100%. And I love the point you bring up about getting the ball out quickly against the Miami Dolphins. And I think this is where Garrett Wilson and Elijah Moore, those two specifically, have done a really good job of getting open and getting open quickly. With Elijah, it just feels like the Jets quarterbacks haven't been able to get him the ball, but it really feels like one of these weeks he's going to pop and just have one of those big games where he's up over 100 yards. And Garrett Wilson, I mean, it's unbelievable. He's 4 games into his NFL career and what he's been able to do. They have a tough task because obviously we know Miami has a couple of good corners, but I think that's really key. If I'm LaFleur, as you said, you got to get those guys open so Zach can get the ball out of his hands quickly, because I think if one, the offensive line struggles the way that it does, and then number 2, guys aren't getting open, that might be the one area where I'd be a little bit worried about Zach this upcoming week.
Another reason why I'm concerned about Zach, which has nothing to do with him as a quarterback, it's more of the offense. It's the offensive line against the run or run blocking. Because a big issue right here with this offense is there's so many injuries up front where there's no continuity. And you need to have continuity on this offensive line in order to excel in the run game, especially in this scheme. And how many times, Matt, have we saw Brees Hall or Carter get the football and there's a defender in their face immediately 2 yards behind the line of scrimmage? And LaFleur is trying his best to establish a run game. And it's so unfortunate that this offensive line is so banged up with injuries that it's not happening. Well, Brees Hall is coming off a really good day, 17 carries, 66 yards, and a game-winning touchdown. But I really hope that the Jets can establish their run game because that's only going to help Zach Wilson open up the playbook even more, not put all the pressure on him, because we don't want Zach Wilson to start throwing the football as much as Joe Flacco did in the first 3 weeks, because that is not a recipe for victory in this league, as we all know. So I'm hoping that we can establish a run game because the running backs are not the issue, Matt. It's the offensive line, and I think the injuries is the reason why the offensive line is this bad. But shout out AVT, because that man, I don't know where we'd be without him. So it's really up to this offense in general to establish their identity, run the football, set up the play action, get rid of the ball quickly, and let's see some shots down the field. I want to see a bomb, an explosive big time play this week for a touchdown.
Yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to get to next to kind of round out this conversation is what you want to see from him going forward. And for me, it's 2 things. One is I think eventually more shots down the field because he has the arm strength, and I think that will open up the run game because you'll have the opportunity, or the defense will have to give you the benefit of the doubt that you could take those shots. So connecting on 1 or 2 of those, I think, would be huge. But then also for me going forward, last year, there were just 3 games where he had multiple passing touchdowns. So I think the next step for Zach is getting into that rhythm where he's having those games where he's throwing 2 or more touchdowns, and, have a game where you throw 3 or 4 touchdowns. I know that's not fair to expect every single week, but if he has a game or 2 like that over the next 13 games remaining, I think I and Jet fans in general would be feeling a lot more confident in Zach Wilson for, being the guy.
Absolutely. It comes down to consistency with Zach, and the unfortunate reality is he's still a young quarterback, and there might be some things on the horizon that Jets fans are going to be scratching their head about. But the question is, how does Zach Wilson bounce back? Is he going to repeat the same mistakes? Is he going to be able to handle adversity? And that Pittsburgh Steelers game showed that he can handle the adversity. He has the mental toughness to live another play. And that's what was the biggest thing that I took away from that Steelers game, that he's able to push through the adversity mentally, because this game is really hard to play as a quarterback position in this league, as we all know. So when it comes to the rest of the season for Zach Wilson, is he going to be able to continue that play in the pocket? Can he continuously step up into the pocket when the pocket's collapsing? Can he find the open guys? Does he still have timing, anticipation? Does he still have rhythm? Does he still have that swag? Is he going to be making people miss in the open field with his legs? Is he going to be safe? I mean, Zach Wilson, guys, has every single trait you'd want in a franchise quarterback. It's just a matter of him and the teammates around him to help him out, and the coaching staff, because I really feel like Joe Douglas did a phenomenal job this offseason with surrounding Zach Wilson with the talent necessary to take that next step. And unfortunately, the offensive line, you cannot blame Douglas for that. I mean, we have like 4 offensive tackles on the injured reserve list. If Max Mitchell goes on there, that's just ridiculous. But I really feel like Zach Wilson has the ability to put up 2+ touchdowns a game, put up maybe a 3-touchdown game, maybe a 4-touchdown game, because guess what? We have the playmakers that's necessary to make it happen. You see all these young quarterbacks around the NFL that's taken that next step. They all have good playmakers. I think Jets fans are very excited about Garrett Wilson. We have a lot of confidence in Elijah Moore. Shout out Corey Davis, who's leading the Jets in receiving this year, who has been the security blanket for Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson loves Corey Davis, and he stepped up when we needed to the most in the fourth quarter. Tyler Conklin's not been perfect this year, but he's still having a really good season when it comes to his positive plays. So the playmakers are getting the job done for the New York Jets, and I really feel like if Zach Wilson can continue this, trend of how he played in the fourth quarter and how he just played against his Pittsburgh Steelers in general, Matt, just be able to, not worry about your mistakes, just continuously look forward, stay in the present, stay in the now, and just stick with your confidence, because Zach he's got a lot of confidence, Matt, and I think that's going to take him a long way in this league.
I agree, Richie. I absolutely love it. Where can people find your stuff if they want to follow along?
Yeah, man, if you want to check me out over on Instagram and Twitter, it's at NYJets_media. And on YouTube, it's at Jets Media. I'll be going live every day throughout the week. We'll be live during the game. Won't be live during this game because it's Jets Media Day. Actually, I'll be at MetLife Stadium. I got 80 of my subscribers coming on there. It will be on the field after the game. So I'm hoping, Matt, me and all my friends and my subscribers can be on the field after the game celebrating a victory and not a loss. We're going to beat the Dolphins. You heard it here first, baby. Let's go, Jets. Appreciate you having me on, Matt.
Absolutely love it. Yes, excited to see everything that comes out from Jets Media Day at the stadium. That's going to be so cool. And I agree. Jets come out with an upset victory. Gotta love it. Thank you again to Richie for coming on. I'm Matt O'Leary. I'll talk to you next time.
Let's go, Jets.